Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the second or third season of Esoteric Agenda. I'm Roger Hanson. Today, I'm your host. Today, we have with us, which, by the way, this is my actual first live stream for Esoteric Agenda. It's always been just me on my own, but today I'm doing a live stream and recording with my guests. First, we have Otto Excelsior, and after that, we have Mark Edworthy, as well as V. Now, V has a real name, but we will just call him V because of his anonymity. Now, we also have Mr. Robot here with us, but he is apparently asleep, I believe, because he hasn't said nothing for like an
He
hour
hasn't
now.
said anything.
Nothing.
Not
So
for class.
he is here on the stream, so hopefully he comes in and we can hear a little bit from him. So welcome you. I want to welcome you guys to the show and say thank you for being on the show with me tonight. And with that being said, I'm gonna get on with what the topic is going to be about. The first episode of Esoteric Agenda this year is going to be about the Book of Soiga. And before I go on any further, I'd just like to ask Otto, have you ever heard of the Book of Soiga before?
Yeah, the Book of Soiga is something that was it was part of John Dee's magical library. And to tell you the truth, I'm not super familiar with it. I never got much into the goetic kind of magic, but I know it's been very influential in a lot of ways. Certainly, it was influential on John Dee, and Dee was very influential on a lot of later occultists. I've always felt that Aleister Crowley took a lot more from John Dee than a lot of people realize, including his magical name, Perdurabo, which I first came across in Dee's wonderful relation, the book of his spirit communications.
Isn't John Dee? Is he the lawyer that was fighting for the witches in the Salem witch trials?
Well, no, he was a court astrologer to Elizabeth I.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, he
Okay,
prognosticated the day to have her coronation and everything, to make a lucky day for it and everything.
okay, yeah.
He was also a secret agent for Elizabethan intelligence services. His code number was
course.
007, interestingly enough.
Oh, the thing. So sorry, I know I'm jumping the gun here, but when I tell people that the Catholic Church used intelligence, it's not just the Jesuits; it's that confessional booth. They had a lot of these priests were just agents of whoever's in power at the time who had influence with a certain church.
Well,
And,
that goes back to the ancient Greeks, I think. If you read, you would go to the temple to get an oracle because they had all these oracle centers. And before you got there, the priests in your town would know what your questions were because you'd ask them and say, "Well, go to the oracle," and then they would write a little message on a carrier pigeon because
right.
all these temples had pigeons. They all had sacred birds.
Yes,
Nobody ever messed with the birds. They didn't realize that. So by the time they got to the next oracle, oh yes, the god said that you were going to ask about that. How did you know? It's Well, a spirit flew through the air and brought the information. It's kind of interesting, yeah. So that goes way back. The religion business is, you got to have a lot of good prestidigitation to have a successful religion.
Yeah, and so, Roger, I apologize. Continue.
You guys did fine. Like I said, I usually don't open this up, so having people on Esoteric Agenda is actually a pretty big deal. So I'm glad that you guys are in here and you're having a conversation.
Good to get some sort of a summary of the background.
Right, and plus, I mean, I've been doing this show by myself, narrating, and after a while, it just really sucks. So hearing other people talk about these topics is really refreshing. You know what I mean? Because I know last year me and me and Bob Dub and Otto, we did a series on uh, the Bacon conspiracy, Shakespeare conspiracy with Roger Bacon, Francis Bacon.
Francis Bacon, yeah.
And I enjoyed that quite a bit, because not too many people have that conversation, and this is kind of where a lot of the esoterics is coming into play, So I really do enjoy hearing other people's thoughts and everything about it. So the book of Soiga, like you guys said, it was a book of from John D. The weird part about this book, though, is like, and a lot of people, they get the story behind it mixed up. Like, yes, during that time period, it was considered dark and evil, but it wasn't really because of what was in the book. Like, it didn't have any kind of incantations that summon dark evil spirits or anything like that.
Well, the only thing I know about John D is that he is a dermatologist. As the first time I come across him, and dermatology is nothing but the study of magic, so it would actually really fit. I never got the chance to go back into what he was about specifically. However, he was a reference step in research about Merlin. So yeah, so that's why I don't know too much about him. But this is, I'm so glad it's brought up. I'm really piqued right now.
Bringing up thaumaturgy is interesting because Dee was a thaumaturgist or a thaumaturgist. He was engaging in what we consider to be angelic or godlike magic. And Roger and I were talking about this a little earlier about a lot of these occultists back then. They assumed that you were going to be spiritually prepared before you would undertake any of this. So if you read like when Dee's conjurations when he was on the continent, and there's a couple of interpretations about what was going on there, but Dee is very famous for having contacted all these spirits with the help of a guy named Sir Edward Kelly, who would look at a scrying stone or a shoe stone. Dee himself was not a medium. He used children for a while, but then he found this Edward Kelly guy seemed to work out really well. And there's arguments about how much Kelly was, he might have been taking advantage of Dee. Maybe he was genuine. Maybe it was a mixture of both. But when he was traveling in Europe is when he had most of these encounters with spirits. But he was always praying. It was always in the name of God. He was a very religious guy, and this was seen as a very important part to keep his magic from slipping into black magic, which of course was actionable, and you could be, executed for that.
It kind of like the view of a paladin,
Yeah.
in D&D terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but he was definitely white light, or at least he saw himself that way.
Now, I've also, because of this book, that's why I'm really kind of doubting on if he was actually, if what it was contacting angels. I from the content that's in this book, I would almost believe that it was drawn off of old Phoenician beliefs.
Well, so that's the entire. It's okay. If you want to think in terms of magics, then you got to think of realms. So each realm has its own kind of magic. You're talking angel magic, which is just that, it has its own realm. Angel magic, and a lot of the occultists actually don't go there. But the Goetia and the Lesser Keys of Solomon, it tells you, these binding spells with the devil that you want. You have to use an angel to bind them. You have to know the names of these angels, and therefore it's sort of angel speak, which, if you follow the ideal here, it's not heretical magic. It's congruent. It's consistent with what the Christian God, the idea of him, would want, because everything is done through his name and through his choir of angels. So, it's strange how much politics gets involved with religion and gets us to hate certain things that are actually canon and a part of the story, or at least make some sort of sense in a way that. But again, politics, they take control of the narrative, and it shapes what we believe. A lot of people don't understand these kind of things. A magic circle in the middle of a room is not inherently demonic. It's just there to trap spirits to commune with. Now, if you want to argue that entire process is heretical, well, when you pray at an altar to God, you're doing the same thing.
Well,
Again,
yeah,
others would argue
yeah.
against that as well. But
You've got
go
the
ahead.
whole point that religion means, at least in Christianity, as I understand it,
Yes.
acceptance. And this implies that there's all sorts of other aspects of nature that are supernatural. And a guy like D, you're right. He was definitely crossing all his T's, dotting all his I's. He was very orthodox. And I think he was a guy that was fascinated with the idea of magic. And remember, the thing today they call physics, they used to call magic. He was a brilliant mathematician for his time. People, his wizardry overshadows that. And he was known in college, as I recall, they were doing a play, and he had constructed a machine, some kind of a stage prop for a Deus ex machina to have a god descend or something from the heavens. And some of the people were apparently scared. It seemed like Matt, how he knows how to do all this stuff. So anyone just working with advanced mathematics was seen as possibly a wizard. And so this was his interest. So he saw himself, well, this is magic, but he wanted to be, integrated into his society. He was very much part of the establishment. He spent all of his time trying to do well at court, trying to fit in as a scholar, but also as an Elizabethan gentleman sort of deal. So yeah, he was definitely going to have the widest magic he could do. But yeah, you're right. You can declare the whole thing heretical, which is, obviously the mainstream churches went with. He was in a very ambiguous position in his time, and depending on the country, he had to be careful of traveling to Catholic countries, and not just because he was an Anglican, but because of his wizardry, which was like right to the stake very often. Remember Bruno?
Well, I kind of think, okay, so let me tell you about my fifth grade experience. Okay, science class. Yeah, fifth grade, right? I remember this to this day. Some weirdo and a scientist, that they have the overcoat, the medical coat,
The lab coat, like,
the lab, yeah. So he's doing stuff with beakers and chemicals, and hey, oh, isn't that cool, kids? I'm like, so couldn't they just hire a magician? Why are we looking at this? The science teacher got mad at me. I was like, science, magic. What? You gonna tell me that they're different? What? Explain it.
Well, they didn't make a difference, they called it natural magic. It's like, oh, we mix these chemicals and we get gunpowder. That's natural magic.
Me saying that kept me out of the principal's office. Explain it. Explain it. Yeah. So, anyhow. But that kind of goes back to the whole, I don't want to say ancient aliens because I hate. There's a lot of implied history. There's a lot of theoretical history, which is a conspiracy doesn't make something not true. I understand that, but they're just so strong in their convictions. Just say it could possibly be, not, it's aliens.
This is this is what we know.
It's not scientific to do that, because you're pushing a narrative, you're pushing religion. And science can be a religion, yes. Science, religion, magic, and come on. It's all within the realm of the things that is built into whatever matrix to control us. There, boom, I said it.
Well, this is a very interesting.
Trade-off.
This is actually a very interesting text because, it wasn't one of these cult texts in the ordinary sense. Okay, like it didn't have any kind of invocations or like Lord rights or anything of that nature. As a matter of fact, it was written out more like a philosophical text where it described to you the behaviors of angels, you know what I mean? And then after that, it gets even more intricate. And I think really what made it so dangerous in that time period was because of the view of the church, you know, because this book was telling these people that this magic, it wasn't just symbolic, you know, or allegorical. It was functional. You know what I mean? That by using this book, you could cause the heavens to move according to like an intelligent pattern and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And like it also, you remember hearing about the
spellbinding. I have a little bit of a narrative with
well,
this.
you've heard about spirits having a hierarchy according to a lot of these old Christian
course.
beliefs, right?
Oh, not just Christians, but I mean, all beliefs. They have pantheons, hierarchies, of course.
You know,
Yeah. In Buddhism too. Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
this kind of stuff would have been dangerous to the church, you know. That so.
Oh yeah, they want a monopoly on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, wouldn't it be two churches at the time? Because this is after the creation of the Church of England, isn't it? So it'd be both Catholic and Anglo-Christian.
Yeah, that just made things even more complicated for people.
But before we get too far, I want to make a mental note with Otto here. You bring up Buddhism quite a lot, and so you're gonna.
It's my shtick.
You're gonna receive some questions from me. I know you and I, we got to do a full show.
Keep in mind, my ignorance of Buddhism is vast. I only speak from my own limited knowledge of it.
Well, I don't have anything direct, but there's Buddhist adjacent sort of things, actually. So you might even be less effective than you think. However, I think you have a better educated guess than anyone else. How about that?
Sounds good. That I can live with.
Okay, so Sun Wukong. Can we talk about the Monkey King at some later point?
Yeah, after this show where we're discussing the Book of Soiga.
So would that be something related? I mean, we're talking Eastern Western mysticism here. I don't know.
It has absolutely nothing to do with the Book of Soiga whatsoever.
Right, where's my ignorance?
Also, the Monkey King thing, that's all Mahayana Buddhism. And I'm a Theravada Buddhist, you know, or as I like to think of it, actual Buddhism. No, I didn't say that out loud. No, Mahayanas are Buddhist too. It's just they just have some weird ideas.
Make you,
but I am somewhat familiar with the Monkey King, but it's not something that I can speak on with authority. I read the Chinese novel Monkey, The Journey to the West.
Yes.
That's basically what I know about the Monkey King.
Yes, Journey to the West. That's exactly.
Yeah. I read that. It was very interesting, but you know, they're Mahayana, so they have some really odd ideas to me. But the one thing I liked about it, we're getting really far from the Book of Soiga. One of the cool things about it was that as the monk traveled through all these journeys, all these adventures with his companions, every so often they would they were good Buddhists, so they were vegetarians. This is Mahayana Buddhism where you're supposed to be a vegetarian. And every so often, like one of them would eat meat or something, or they'd break a precept and they'd get in trouble. But the monsters all wanted to eat the monk because they thought that if they ate the flesh of an enlightened being, then they would gain this power.
Right.
And the attitude in it was interesting, that it was seen no different. There was no shock to anyone eating a person than there would be to eating a rabbit or a pig. It was just like, oh, it's just another animal to eat. And there was kind of a message there, just like you don't think anything about eating, like, you know, a cow. These ogres and stuff don't even think twice about eating a person. And when I was first reading the book, it's like, there's no shock over this. But then I get into the rhythm of the book. It's like, well, yeah, why would it be any different, you know, a monster eating a person than a person, you know, eating an animal sort of deal. So it was a nice little... But that is a Mahayana, you know, that whole vegetarian thing.
My skin is tingling, my friend.
Well, it's a good argument for vegetarianism. I mean, I think there are good ethical arguments for vegetarianism. I don't think there are necessarily good health arguments.
You just
But they're good ethical
more
arguments.
questions are I'm learning some things, but there are more questions that are mounting from that. But I don't want to disrupt the show.
Soiga.
Well,
Soiga.
you've already done that, so thank you.
Soiga. We got to concentrate on the book of Soiga with all those weird tables in it and stuff.
We're
well, it's
no, I mean
no.
no.
Put some sort of a background to what
That's
we're
what
going to talk about.
That's what we're talking about right now. Like,
Okay.
You're talking about Buddhism. We started the show off about Soiga. Okay, like that was the topic.
Yes.
Not Soylent Green.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I mean, it's
Soiga.
like
hey, it's better than Soylent Brown. I always say.
Ah.
well, see the thing
Clean up your
about
soil.
the thing about it is with this book, it's like you'll hear everybody always talk about the Voynich manuscript and all of these
Yes.
other manuscripts. This one is probably the most profound out of all of the books. There's only one more book that I think is just as profound from that time period, but I can bring it up later, but this
The Devil's Bible?
No.
No.
Believe it or not, it is not the Devil's Bible. But the thing of it is it gets less publicity. I believe it's not very well known by too many people. You know what I mean? And it was a very profound text.
Well, as this relates to anything in the Nag Hammadi?
This book is well, you know how the Voynich manuscript is coded and they can't decipher.
Yes.
Okay.
It has all kinds of pictures of plant life that we don't know about anymore.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
the Voynich manuscript. I think it's been pretty debunked. I've seen some very good. I mean, it's a wonderful, interesting thing, but there are so many. For one thing, the guy that was trying to sell it constantly. He wanted like 20 grand for it, and he had to keep coming down in price. When they examine the paper comes from like all these different sources and like odd cuts, like they'd been cut from books that had like blank pages. Very unusual for binding at that time. And some of the images, this one guy traced to actual like 18th century and 19th century paintings, like the one with all the girls like with the rope and the stars dancing around. He showed some like French romantic paintings that looks directly taken from, and add that to the guy that was selling it. There was a notorious forger.
In concept or actual physical material?
Material.
When you say it was taken from.
Oh no, the concept. I mean, you look at the drawing and then you look at the painting, and it's basically the same thing. It's
okay.
So. I mean, I would love the Voynich manuscript. I mean, because there's things that you could only see through a microscope in there. There's pictures of things you can only see through a telescope, and that makes it fascinating. And he was trying to sell it as Roger Bacon's something by Roger Bacon, that basically Roger Bacon invented the telescope and the microscope. And we know he did have magnifying lenses and stuff. He might have seen some stuff, but I don't know. I would love for it to be real, and this guy could be wrong. But the evidence I saw, especially like what got me was like all the way it was bound and the way that the paper, the paper didn't match. It was just like odd cuts from different things. And this guy had been caught forging stuff before. So I don't know. It'd be an interesting book to have, but I don't know. And if they decoded it, who knows what it would say? Like, you idiot, you bought this thing. Maybe when we decode it, we'll get the real truth behind it.
And I do have to agree, because like when they did research, they found out that these pages, it looked like there were bits and pieces that were added to it from different books that they don't know where those came from. So they kind of like came through.
I think there were some questions of the ink as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and so I kind of want to just add a parallel to this. I'm not quite sure what the book is that we're supposed to be talking about.
Now,
we see now that we talked about science and magic. You know how science relates to history and religion, and now we're talking about trying to interpret something from the past as history when it could have just been fiction. How about that?
No, I mean you got
meant to be fiction.
Hold up. Now, people get caught up in this whole thing like history has to be fact. Now, when it comes to what fictional books that were written, so Shakespeare wasn't a part of history, which I don't believe Shakespeare was actually a real person. I do believe that it was a pen name. But
Yeah.
but you're telling me that these fictional books that supposedly changed every way that we thought about freaking literature since then isn't a part of history. You know,
Well,
that's
no,
the
no,
thing.
no. I'm not saying that, but it's to detail some sort of universe that is not current today, and it's from the past. Now, are we to discern that as history or just pure religion that could possibly have been fiction
Well,
altogether?
history
I
is a
mean,
story we tell ourselves today,
I'm a,
and
I
we
mean, we
always.
go to movies, don't we? We go to movies, we watch
I'm
television.
a writer. I
Didn't they
like
have
to
their own form
read.
of television back in the old days? It could have been
I,
a fictional book.
I'm
The
Why
a
thing,
is
the thing
everything
about
accurate history?
the thing about history is it's all fiction in a sense, because you have to, reduce something that's indescribably huge down to like a few lines. We have some of these old English annals, year whatever, hard winter, king such and such died. It's very laconic, and we know very little. But I do know there was this wonderful book by, I always mispronounce his name, but it's spelled like Mercia or Merkia Eliade, Eliade, about the cosmic eternal return, like the myth of the eternal return. And, primitive people, so called primitive people, and I think this is still in all of us, they don't tend to have a historical sense like this happens, that happens, this happens, but of these cyclic patterns. And that's why, like, they'll tell a story about, I was just listening, they tell the same story again and again about these leaders, because they all kind of morph into, because that's the sort of thing a leader does. And it can be good or bad, but like, I was just listening, there was a story about Pedro the Cruel. I think he was King of Castile, and there was a story that he had invited all the beggars and sick and infirm in his realm to a big feast, and he fed them all. I said, "How would you like to not have any cares anymore?" We'd love that. So he boarded up the doors and burned the place down, and that way he got rid of poverty and homelessness in his kingdom. But they tell the exact same story about Vlad the Impaler in Wallachia, and it's like, did either of these guys do this? Probably not. I mean, why would you burn down a palace anyway just to kill a few like hobos? But it's just that history can become just this like archetype that people are fitted into. Now, I've heard stories that like they were telling stories about the Duke of Wellington or something that matched with like ancient like Germanic legends or something, and that never happened. But we're close enough to some of these historical figures. We know that Lawrence of Arabia didn't do this, and Gordon of Khartoum didn't do that, or Chinese Gordon as he was known. But in another 100 years, 1,000 years, history will be these stories. And who's to say that's not accurate in itself?
Well,
Because it reflects our minds.
it's like this book too, right here. This kind of goes with like this generation. And when I say this generation, if you're under 40 years old, I'm talking about you. Okay, you've
That's
lost
nobody on this show, then, right?
you've lost the imagination. Okay, because freaking like this stuff is all about ciphers. Okay, and this part that I was trying to get to, it's about this cipher that's in the book that for the longest time they could not figure out what the book was actually generating with these ciphers. You know what I mean? And it fascinated them. And for people
Okay.
my age,
Does this
I find
actually contain?
hold up, I'm talking now. Now, for people in my generation, we love that stuff. Okay, we loved reading about magic. We loved reading about secret ciphers. See, and it doesn't matter about what it pertained. It's about having an imagination and actually wanting to read something for the.
Did it have the ciphers in it?
Yes, it did.
Okay, that was my question.
Oh,
But
that's interesting, because you bring up the ciphers, and I think we were talking about before about, and I think I brought up that there was this guy writing named Tritemius, Trtemius, and he wrote a book called Steganographica, and steganography is what they called ciphering back then. and it was 3 volumes, and they could never decipher the 3rd volume. And to read it, it was all about how to summon angels to carry your messages, and the book was supposed to be how to get your messages through enemy lines and they'll never see them.
Right.
And finally, some guy, I'd have to look it up. I think it was in the night. I mean, guys from the NSA. This was like a big thing. They were studying this. So this guy finally broke the code in the 80s, and I think it was the 80s or 90s, and it turned out that the whole thing was an instruction on how to write a letter that looked like something completely different and have a whole different message. So each one of the magical formulas would actually say something like, okay, this is how you do this. And it was like instructions, and then it would say, so you can now say enemy troops are here, this, that. But anyone reading this is going to think it's and it's brilliantly done. And John Dee was very much into this, and this was, again, considered part of magic. They were all into like moving alphabets and around, letters around. The Holy Kabbalah was gaining in popularity then, although it had been around for a while. And,
well, I mean, yeah, you have everything is coded. If you go to a Catholic mass, they're and some of the chants and some of the way the lyrics in which they sing in some of these mass. So a part of the lyrics include the literal worship of Lucifer. They're literally saying in Latin how they are worshiping Lucifer.
Christ is the bringer of light, Lucifer.
And there's duality in that which we have. I'm sure we discussed that link already. But yeah, but there is what was told to the people and what the clergy know as their knowledge, their higher knowledge.
I mean, have you ever been to midnight mass? My God, Christmas mass, midnight mass at Christmas.
Yeah,
that is the most wonderfully pagan ceremony.
The only way.
G.K. Chesterton said that. He said, if you want a real paganism, it's like it's not in the papers. It's not this. The only really pagan thing in the world today is the Catholic Church. And if you really want to be a pagan, you got to look to the church.
On the hill of the world's most famous hill where you worship pagan gods or did witchcraft. That whole hill was taken over by but this is what you do whenever you conquer regions and you want to control the world. You move into a region, you try to take over the customs. If you're not going to slaughter everybody, you take over the customs and you start adapting their gods into your gods. So that Vatican is a famous place for that happening.
The pagan conversion was kind of interesting, and it was a lot more nuanced. And you do make a good point about the Vatican and Rome, because the Pope, if you look carefully at the legal theory behind the papacy, is that the short version is it's basically a continuation of the Roman Empire, and the Pope is the last existing official of the Roman imperial government that you could argue is arguably the last official, and his title is Pontifex Maximus.
You were not wrong.
That means he is the overseer of all religious cults in Rome. Now, they made only Christianity legal, so that means in practice, his power is limited to Christianity. However, technically, he is chief of all pagan religions in Rome as well, which I always thought was very interesting.
Wow!
But the conversion to Christianity was very interesting and more nuanced than people think. There was actually G.K. Chesterton, who I quote a lot, pointed out that a lot of the conversion, they weren't really like threatening to burn people at the stake if they didn't convert. A lot of people were very interested in Christianity and converting because the traditional pagan religions didn't provide the kind of theological answers that people were looking for. And people were going to Mithraism, people were going to the Isaic mysteries, by which I do not mean the prophet Isaiah, but the goddess Isis. So there was a lot of interest in alternate spirituality, kind of like today, or at least in the 60s and 70s. And then, of course, the thing with the thing about Christianity was that I think the government saw that it was a useful tool. They wanted a unified religious, right? That's what they used to do with paganism. You had the cult of the emperor's genius. So you didn't really worship the emperor, but you worshiped the good luck of the emperor because the empire depended on it. You had all this stuff. Christianity was getting really big, and it was very uniform and very structured, a hell of a lot more than the pagan religions were. So the emperor just stepped in, and the next thing you know, it becomes the state religion, and the statues of Christ start looking an awful lot like Constantine, and and you go from there, and suddenly you've got the state enforcing. I mean, it used to be they just argue. I mean, they'd have these church councils, and like the different bishops would bring their monks with them, and whoever had the most monks that could beat up the other monks would like win the argument, and they would. And obviously, the Holy Spirit moved upon these people. It's interesting. But then now you could have like, well, the emperor is going to exile you if you vote against this kind of stuff. So the state and the religion became, and I think the state won out. I mean, as far as influence.
And I love this. This is the only thing that really connects me with Warhammer 40K. Is for the simple fact the Imperium. They literally had a Council of Nicaea where they were to decide whether or not psyker powers would be used by the Space Marine legions, or anybody for that matter.
Wow.
And it was decreed, no, this is bad. Nobody's
Well,
just like,
if you want to put that into context about what's going on here, when you look at the text, okay, the thing about it is when it comes to the church, okay, they were terrified of this book because of John Dee's reaction to it. Because in the end, what happened was he was supposedly supposed to be talking to angels, okay, and one angel could tell you how to properly handle the book, while other ones would constantly warn you that if you used it improperly, then there were consequences that would be involved, okay? So he ended up getting so terrified by this that he set the book to the side and he didn't use it anymore. And and John Dee wasn't the kind of guy that got scared easily when it come to magic, okay, at all. So like this influenced him so bad that it also influenced the people around him and then people later on. So you had the church that people were afraid of, but then you also had what John Dee did that terrified him too. So if you didn't do these rituals or these certain things in a certain way that was pure and right and just, then there would be consequences, and it scared the heck out of people. So that's kind of why this book became infamous, basically.
Underneath that, it kind of reminds me of like the ancient like the Hebrew rabbis. They, exorcism. When you talk about the time period with Christ, exorcisms. Everybody was doing exorcisms back then. Like it was such a common thing that, and they had their own mysticisms, their own spells. They were their spells on the caps of the skull caps of a human being, and write these things as warnings a lot of times that would be buried underneath the your front doorstep or something, and it's to ward off evil spirits, which is technically necromancy. But I don't want to get into that or make anyone mad. But I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
Well, Roger also does make an important point, I think, where these things were like, they treated this the way we treat handling nuclear isotopes today. Or like even just operating an X-ray machine where they put on the big lead shields and stuff. This was their rocket science. This was their high energy physics. They really felt like they were closing in on manipulating the very fabric of reality. They thought they were going to do it through prayer and angelic intervention. And, along the way, they mixed up some chemicals and came up with some important stuff. And again, they kind of separated out the stuff that worked more consistently. But at the time, a book like this was seen as potentially very dangerous, especially if not approached properly. And this is why you had the Index Prohibitorum They weren't burning books for fun or because they, just were mean people that, people shouldn't be allowed to read that. They were really worried about, they thought these books were imperiling people's lives and worse, their souls, which they saw as a very real and important danger at that time. So to them, that justified stuff that we would not, I would never advocate burning a book, but to them, it was like disposing of radioactive waste.
We didn't have a leap in medical science until people started cutting up dead bodies,
Well, see what made another thing that made this book so dangerous is it didn't make the reader think that misuse of it was going to anger a god. Okay, instead it said that misuse would literally damage that person. You know what I mean? You will be damaged, period. It won't be from a god. But because of your misuse, you will be personally damaged because of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That gives a lot of responsibility to the user, because at that point you are kind of you're not God, but you're a little G, right? You're a little God. That gives us that psychic or magical or sovereign entity feel, right?
It's an important warning.
I'm just thinking, isn't one of the points of the split from Catholicism to Anglo-Christian was to dispel some of the mysticism, to remove some of the more extreme mysticism?
Well,
yeah. Well, I mean, think, what level of mysticism are we talking about? You know what I mean? Because they just kind of like went from one form to another. Because like.
I think I know what Mark's talking about, because the creation of the Anglican Church, and Mark probably knows more about the detail. I wish Bob were here, because Bob knows a lot about the church. But Mark, I think what you're talking about are the currents in Protestant thought at the time. Guys like Calvin, and I believe Calvinism influenced Anglicanism to a certain degree, or guys like Wycliffe. A lot of guys who were very iconoclastic. They read the Bible in the vernacular. They're suddenly like, hey, they didn't say anything in here about incense, cloth of gold, and archbishops and cardinals having jeweled mitres and red hats and stuff, right? So, and they took that to an extreme with the Puritans. And on the other hand, you also had in the particular Anglican split, this was a top-down political move. I mean, politics and the church were basically the same thing at the time. Bishops of city-states in Germany were quite common, and one day your prince bishop might be a Catholic bishop, and then somebody dies, someone inherits, and guess what? He's a Protestant bishop. And the whole country is now officially Protestant. And, you just take down the crucifix, put up the plain cross, and keep bringing the cash in. It's just not going to Rome now. So, but it was more than just religious belief. A lot of political things pushed this too. And I think there were also politics behind the simplifying of the liturgy, doing away with very expensive. And that was another thing about the Anglican Church too. When Henry basically looted the monasteries and churches, Glastonbury's gone. Huge amounts of statuary, books, and things were destroyed by not the Anglicans in London, who were very erudite people who basically just changed a couple of things on their vestments but kept going. These were the more Puritan-inspired mobs. And then, to tell you the truth, and we've talked about this before, a mob's intelligence is very different from an individual's. I don't think they had much deep theological thought beyond, hey, free stuff. Let's go. We get to have a big fire, too. I hated those monks. And the other thing was, didn't the churches own something like a third of the lands in England or something? The collecting
you
rent.
think there'd be a conflict of interest with some things?
So there was a political and economic pressures. And the other argument, yes, I know the church also did provide a lot of things like hospitals, care for the ill. It went both ways. It's not a black and white story, but some people had something and someone else wanted it.
Can I say it's a human story? Because
very human.
This is politics, and this happened 1,000 times over.
Yeah.
Well, something with every generation, right?
Yeah.
And,
And
and it's
Henry VIII spent enormous amounts of money,
uh,
enormous amounts of money. Look up the Field of the Cloth of Gold. I mean, and then of course he had that fistula, and he became a bastard after that. I mean that's the downside of monarchy, which there are a lot of good sides to it, but the downside is the monarch suddenly gets a fistula and starts chopping people's heads off right and left because he's in a bad mood. Uh, but yeah, he had enormous expenses, and but yeah, there's always a lot of levels to it, and certainly a lot was lost though with that. To me, and of course I first saw it as the books. Oh my God, the books! So it had magical things in it. Might have been mathematics,
Yeah.
like we were talking about earlier. Just knowing
Mhm.
advanced mathematics was enough that was magic. You were a wizard. It was considered natural magic and was looped under that, and it had an ambiguous position with the church. We don't want people thinking too much
Right.
like that.
And,
Yeah.
and that was actually a part of what was in the book. It had the mathematics, it had the astrology, talking to
Mm-hmm.
angels, all
Mm-hmm.
of it. It was in there. And I think what you guys were just talking about is exactly what the biggest fear was. It was troubling to the religious culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
well, I
Because
always thought of it like this: like if you say mathematician and then you say magician,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it kind of a nickname like Tony is to Anthony?
yep.
Yeah,
So
kinda.
But also keep it to the basic simples too, because like with the church, they emphasized obedience and humility. Okay, and that was it. They didn't want anything out there that suggested that knowledge could give you access to power, and
or
power.
access outside of them, because if you've got that book, then you can contact angels. Why do you need to go to church and listen to the priest that you already know is maybe a moral reprobate? And I know there are theological arguments about that no matter what the sinful state of the priest, still the sacraments are still valid, kind of deal. But wait, you
Right,
can talk to an angel. And
right.
what if the angel tells you something different from what the church teaches? Who are you going to listen to? I'm listening to the angel, pal. So I could see where the church would get very worried about people having books like this.
And right there, when you said that, that made me think of what I learned. They called it moral alignment. You know what I mean? Like it was literally a moral alignment back then, where it was like a foundation in for all
so
of.
they addressed the issue and put some ambiguous title to it. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is that should be a crime. But yeah, absolutely. Who are you gonna believe? I
Yeah.
had a very interesting experience here living with um, they don't like to be called Mormons, Latter Day Saints
Right. LDS church.
parishioners.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't like. They say Mormons is derogatory, so I'll try not to use that. So yeah, very very interesting beliefs, sort of like that. So I I don't know.
Well, V, you're into Gnosticism, right?
Yes.
Isn't that and I'm not super into it, but as I understand it, at least I know there's a lot of different kinds of Gnostics, but part of the whole Gnostic idea is that Gnostic means no, so that rather than accepting religion on faith, you try to have your own religious experience that's unique to you. So it's like a personal quest. And I remember reading someone who said that the Gnostic will read a Gnostic scripture, perhaps, but this is simply a guide to help them to get to a point where they can write their own scripture from their
I
own
liken it.
experience.
I liken it to psychological programming to push one towards the science to become a scientist, essentially.
Okay.
Because you are going to want to know how matter reacts, what we're made of, why. I mean, you want to talk about Gnostics. If you're talking Sethian or Valentinian, I mean, you have different ideas, or Mercutians, Gnostics. They
Sort
have
of the
different
Ophites,
ideas
too.
on the physicality of our world. So I'll give you examples. It's a weird example, but I think it should hit on the nose. Um, Christ was never here on earth. He was here in solid spirit. So when he was crucified, that was just light, and he just ascended.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So there was no physical matter because matter is evil.
Right.
So you talking Sethians and so forth. So
They all disappeared because they wouldn't have children because matter was evil and children were evil. So
Well,
that is a
they,
big concern within Gnostics. Yes, that was a whole movement by itself too. Some of these, so you don't hear some of these trains of thoughts because the Catholic Church called out crusades against anybody who had a controversial or opposing idea about Christianity. These tribes, these groups of people, these little churches got wiped out.
you know what
Okay.
else too, though? It was also when they weren't bringing the money in. Because if you remember the Albigensian Crusade, which they preached in southern France, a crusade against French people, right?
Right.
Because they were Cathars, which taught, among
Right,
other
the
things,
Cathars.
that the moral turpitude of a priest didn't matter, and a priest was supposed to be in a state of grace before. But so they said that everyone ignored the Catholic bishops and priests, and they would the Catholic churches would be empty, and the Cathar churches were full. And guess what? That's where the donations were going too. So when they marched in there, when they had the famous line, they said, "Who do we kill? Kill them all," said the papal nuncio. "God will know his own."
Today's historians are debating on whether the Cathars actually existed in the first place.
Well, they did their best to make them not exist at all, but
right.
But I think a lot of it had to do with just not only losing the authority, but losing the political control that the church had over those people, and the money. And on the other hand of it, you look at the other side of it, Haiti. I don't know if you're familiar with the condition of the Roman Catholic Church in Haiti, but in Haiti, I think it's something like probably 90% of Roman Catholics in Haiti are also members of the voodoo cult. And to be a voodoo priest in good standing, you also have to be a Roman Catholic priest in good standing. So almost the whole island, the Catholics of the island are, I think, arguably in a state of heresy when it comes to the church. However, they're all very good Catholics, and the poorest people on earth. They give lots of money to the churches. They support the church. They love the Pope, and they love because for them, Catholicism is what powers their pagan cult. And the church has no trouble with this. They don't talk about it too much. It almost never comes up.
Please tell me that's not the most Warhammer 40K thing you've ever heard.
Everything is pretty much 40K Warhammer.
That was the most Warhammer 40K thing I've ever heard.
Where do you think?
On the spot.
Where do you think Warhammer 40K comes from?
I
you know, I mean, it's like these tyrannical.
To hear it out loud.
These tyrannical empires that were out in power 300 years ago. You know, that everybody claims wasn't as bad as what we have in this horrible, horrible world we have today. Oh my goodness, I've got to go out and I've got to vote. I have to go down to the store and get my vitamin D milk, pasteurized and cold, waiting for me. You know, it's like these people back then lived in a brutal world where if you didn't keep your head down and keep your mouth shut, they would have killed you. You didn't get to wear the freaking king's clothing or the queen's freaking dress, you know. I had an argument with my sister because she honestly believed that every single person in the 1700s wore a girdle. I'm like, dude, there are there are women that couldn't afford a girdle.
There were women laboring hard, scrubbing floors. They couldn't do all that work in a girdle.
Yeah.
All those downtrodden underclass.
But people
they couldn't afford a blanket.
Right. People today are so brainwashed into thinking that they can really relate to people back in those days, and they don't have a clue.
Well, presentism. It's called presentism because you think everything had to be the way it is in the present. It's like I was reading a book by Rudyard Kipling, and a wonderful author. And this woman was writing. It was a more modern edition, so that I try to like my Shakespeare edition, all printed before 1954. I love it. There's nothing woke in any of the commentary, but she's writing about how awful Kipling is, and he's wrong about this, and he's wrong about that, and he has the wrong attitude about race, and he has the wrong attitude about sex, and he has the wrong attitude about imperialism and and tobacco. And she can't understand why anyone would like anyone who's wrong about all these things, and yet she admits by the end of the thing that, and yet people keep buying his books, and he's still one of the most popular about it. And I just can't understand it because why do people like him? They're not supposed to like him.
Yeah.
And I hate that.
Yeah.
I can't. This drives me bazooka. It's like, don't
It,
lecture me. I was reading a book of Chaucer. I mean, that's a long time ago. And it's like, it's something about the wife of Bath's tale came up, and there's a footnote, and it's like, this is sexism. I'm like, what? That is an unnecessary comment.
right.
I watch this old, we all watch these old movies where it's all full of racism and sexism and stuff. And when I look at that stuff, I laugh because it has nothing to do with this world that we live in now. It's funny because it's not true. And it's just this thing. And even the people at the time sometimes were laughing at it. And
Yeah.
it just seems so asinine. No, I'm not going to believe that just because I see it in a movie from 1923. I'm not going to, that's a pretty good idea. We should start lynching people again because that seemed to work really good in that movie. Like, no, that's not how people think. Jeez.
On a positive note, Little House on the Prairie. You see freaking Little House on the Prairie, and all those
Oh,
kids
that was
are
a great show.
Yeah, but they're all sitting in the classroom, and of course, every day before school, they stood up and did the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry, dude. They didn't do that back then. They did not stand up in class and say the Pledge of Allegiance. That didn't happen until the 1900s. That
That was for those German immigrants. Those guys from Devon that were coming over.
Shots fired, ladies and gentlemen.
My whole point is that they wanted to imprint that idea on these people's minds during that time period that, hey, back in the 1800s when the pioneers were settling the frontier, those children went to school and they stood up and they said the Pledge of the Allegiance, and all of these people just fell for that stuff.
Because it's on TV.
Right.
You know what?
Remember Ken Burns, The Civil War, that PBS series years ago?
Mm-hmm.
It was really famous.
Dude, no. Update your references, damn it.
Well,
no.
All right, well, I think we made a later one, but basically, they were showing like scenes from the Civil War, and they would like show like basically actors, and they would make the film look grainy, like the film was like from the 1910s or something. And it's like, I just can imagine people in the future saying, "Look, it's an actual film from 1863. Here's film of Lincoln walking around. We're not sure of the provenance, but it came from like 1860 or 1960, somewhere back around then. So it's within the possibility."
Hey, can I just stop you for a minute, dude? I want to say you are I can only describe a library with a personality. Holy crap!
Thank you.
This is if AI was like you, I would definitely buy into it.
He's gonna propose to you eventually because
this guy keeps me fired up.
I'm spoken for. Sorry.
Hey, you know what? And deservingly so.
I like to think so.
Well, I mean, like,
wow.
I know a lot of this that we've been talking about may not seem like it doesn't relate, but it does, because this kind of conversation that we're having right now is the kind of stuff that this book and other books like this actually encourage. It allowed people to say, hold on a minute, something's not right here, because you got to understand something. During this time, okay, this was a time, or it was an age that where the people valued, information and technical mastery. You know what I mean?
Right.
And when the idea that like certain forms of knowledge was capable of not only empowering a person but also destabilizing them as well.
That's maybe these AIs are our version of what Dee and them were doing through their higher consciousness or imagination or whatever. They were channeling, which is, call it self-hypnosis, whatever, but they were talking to these either maybe parts of their unconscious, maybe angels, I don't know. But now people are talking to AI, and the AI answers very consistently to everyone. I mean, like you were saying, Rod, not everybody was ready for these books. And even the fewer people that actually got them actually did the work. I mean, you can do these occult exercises and you will get results. You know, Crowley used to say, by doing certain things, certain results follow. Students are most earnestly warned against attributing objective reality or philosophic validity to any of the results obtained. But things do happen, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, and you don't always know what you're going to get, which is why basically you moved away from it.
On that point, isn't that still true today? I mean, as an example, I've got I reckon about 42 plus years worth of technical knowledge under my belt, and as everybody knows, I aided people like mines users into provided technical support. They are still that knowledge is still, you still have to be somewhat a expert in providing that knowledge, and some people may accept that knowledge and some people may not accept that knowledge. Some people may become the next computer chewing, and somebody else may become, I don't know, a complete idiot when it comes to technology.
But you know, Mark, with that whole thing about our technology being the magic of today, that would make you something of a wizardly figure.
Yeah,
you could be the John Dee of the group here. You got the hair for it.
We all
I
need
used to have hair like that. Oh, you saw the pictures. Oh,
we all need to convince Mark to wear a robe, just a robe, the one that
Well,
kind
he's got a purple jacket on now. Looks really. Just needs some stars and bangles on it.
It's sort of bluish grey.
Oh, it must be my. Oh, you know what it is? My phone changes the color of everything because it's after dark, so it's probably going through a filter. But you could get a purple jacket and put stars and spangles on it. Keyboards, algorithms,
but see how progressive
mathematical formulae.
I don't even use that setting on my phone. That's very progressive. So, wow.
I have trouble sleeping, so I try to give myself every help I can. I'm like my friend Panyabasa. I hate to go to bed, but once I'm in bed, I hate to get up.
That's really weird that you mentioned that. That's really weird that you mentioned that, because the other night we were talking and I was picking on Mark Edworthy, who was laying in bed on his phone and he couldn't answer properly because it was his phone doesn't allow it. So he gets up out of bed to go to his computer so that he could answer me back, and I'm thinking whatever he's going to say is important, right? And no, he said like maybe, what was it, three words, Mark?
So well, it was, yeah. Just make the point. Funny enough, I have
done that. I've done that too.
Not used, but yeah.
He did that, you know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, you got out of bed just for that? I was like, no, go lay back down. What the heck, dude? You know? So and the thing that,
haven't we all done that?
Well, no, I would never. Once I lay down in bed, it's over. That's just the way it is.
I turn everything off before I go to bed. All my electronics are turned off, plugged in, charging, and I go to sleep.
I've had a few people talking about how they have a rough time sleeping, and they asked me, well, haven't you only slept like 5 hours a day? Are you able to sleep 8 hours? I'm like, yeah, I sleep 8 hours every night. I'm like, I've never had sleeping disorders where I couldn't sleep 8 hours, and I will always wake up exactly at 8 hours.
I was born an insomniac.
Wow.
I went all throughout junior high and high school with 1 hour of sleep a night. Can you believe that?
Well, everyone varies.
I think that has to do.
But now I can go sleep whenever I want. Now
that has to do with magic.
I figured out how. Yeah, go ahead.
That has to do with magic.
It's magic.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you. How do I make this friendly for this show? I got a pet, and this pet calmed me down, and I like to pet my pet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty little kitten. She liked the purr, and she would help me go to sleep.
It's good. And you know, right there too. Okay, just to kind of bring that up,
Yes.
familiars are actually
Oh yes.
that they are actually what people who practice witchcraft and everything do believe in, like familiars and cats and stuff. That is a real thing.
Absolutely. That is.
You know.
Absolutely.
I always liked capturing a spirit and putting it into a gem. Wear it as a
Oh,
ring. Then
yeah.
you're like the spirit of the ring.
Like Eldar Soul Spirit Stone.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Soul
There you
Gem.
go.
yeah.
Soul Gem off of Elder Scrolls Skyrim.
Yeah.
You just get that crystal, and what you do is when you go to kill a dragon, you kill the dragon and you come up to it, and like all of the soul of the dragon comes up out of the dragon into your crystal,
Huh.
and then
I don't know if I'd want a dragon soul.
yeah. Well, when you do that, what happens is like gives you abilities.
Oh, okay.
You know, so you can use those abilities to like slow down time when you're shooting your bow, or when you're going into battle, you can slow down time and things of that nature, or do a shout, which will bring a dragon.
Hey, that's why uh, oh god, gosh, wrong show. Sorry, you guys should know about that.
You can make an oracle out of a crystal if set it in a ring if you can get it to be inhabited, and then you can wear the ring and it can act as an oracle for you, or do other things sometimes.
Wait, and this might be related to what you just said. I would have some friends who would, I don't know, I would complain about an issue, and some people just hand me a crystal, say, "Hey, put this in your window." And it doesn't matter what the issue I complain about. I've been experimenting with this for a while, for at least 30 years now. When you complain about something or other, some people just hand you a crystal and say, "Put this in your window." What do you know about that? Does anybody
I
have
actually
any
know.
opinion on that?
I know very little about crystals. I know people that are very into them. I know people that have businesses built around crystals. We have something around here called they're like these big quartz crystals, and what do they call them? Something Herkimer diamonds.
And geodes, from crystals to geodes.
Oh,
Yeah.
we've got geodes as well, yeah, and
Yeah.
they're very popular with some people. I know a little bit about, and this stuff is all like is hermetic stuff. There's like you can get the information from the hermetic writings, Corpus Hermeticum. But you can basically and have cause to be inhabited certain jewels like amethysts, rubies, and amethysts work very well. And the cool thing about using amethysts is amethysts are now very cheap. But in the Middle Ages in Europe, where these books were written, they were more valuable than diamonds. They were amazingly rare. That's why the Pope's ring was amethyst, because he always had to show off he had more power than any earthly king. That's why he wears that three crowns, you know, because he just to show. So, but my own take on it, with my limited knowledge of crystals, is I think they probably have a certain resonance, but any power, at least from the kind of model I'm using, would have to be something that you direct into it first. So you would have to take it, cleanse it somehow, and then get it to be inhabited by something that you wanted to inhabit it. But I know there are other models of working with crystals having to do with resonance and color and chakras and stuff. I know very little about that.
Well, but
a
that's that
Reiki friend that
doesn't
might
that
know something
stem
about
off
it.
of quantum computers today because of the crystals, the diamonds.
Well, that's in everything. We just actually covered that.
Well,
Oh,
didn't we cover that
they
recently?
definitely have physical properties that are. Actually, I was just talking to somebody whose son actually has crystals. When he holds crystals in his palm, they'll vibrate sometimes, and it's probably because of electromagnetic field. Yeah,
It's the
so
oscillation levels. Mark and Mr. Robot said that they were completely amazed and astounded by my extreme knowledge because I pointed out the need for crystals and how they play a part in computer science. They were
We were
complete.
talking about real-time clocks and yeah,
Yeah.
moderation. Yeah.
Elaborate on that. So tell them how great and brilliant I am, so that they know. Go forth, Mark Edwardy. Right there.
I love you. You are more than capable of explaining your trumpet.
Let the welkin ring.
Well,
Let it be known throughout
crystals.
the
Well,
land.
that kind of stuff is interesting, especially when you think about astrology. You know, every month has its own birthstone. Everybody has their own gem they're supposed to correlate to. Uh, I don't know if that's a system of control built in, whether it's psychological or maybe has some sort of effect on us due to gravitational positions and radiation emitted from heavenly bodies across our solar system. I mean, I don't know. There's so many theories here, right?
Yeah. Well, I know. With me, I see. Otto knows this. I don't know if I told you this before, B, but I know Mark knows it too. But I spent a lot of time homeless in L.A. County, and um, I hung out with a lot of hippies, so I kind of know a little bit about the trendy parts of this. Okay, so don't take me on face value when it comes to people who are serious about this stuff. Just I know what the hippies and everything are about when it comes to the magic. Like you have the crystals that they use, and then to purify it, you have to get yourself water. You have to get yourself mineral waters. Different kinds of waters purifies these crystals different ways. And they don't just have like the crystals that you put around your neck or the bracelet. They also, there's some of them that have actually staffs that they have with a rod or a crystal on the top of it, and they carry that everywhere around with them. It is interesting how they do that stuff, but I never got into that. And like Nancy, she mentioned it before, where she's not into all that. She's more of the pagan focused kind of witch. You know what I mean? Because like even Wiccan, the New Age Wiccan that Mark said is older in England, it's actually new. You know what I mean? Because it's like from the 19th century up until now. That's new compared to the older witchcraft. You know. So, but with there's a whole bunch of different stuff when it comes to this stuff, and when it comes to crystals, I think what it has to do is with the isolation. You know what I mean? I think that's really what they've caught on to from even way back when with the oscillation, the way that they can manipulate oscillation and frequency with these crystals, you know.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's, you know, talk about piezoelectricity. Talk about uh, piezomagnetics. Try to find some literature on that. I dare you. I dare you. Go research it. Anybody listening to this, go research it. Let's have a master class. let's find something out about this, please.
There's a really good website that has a lot of patents and papers on things like alternate energy, physioelectrics. They had the one where they, you know, like you can take copper wire. If you take like a quarter mile of copper wire and take, you know, stakes that are insulated, you know, like little insulators, and run it and put it, like align it with the rotation of the earth, it'll generate electricity. Not a lot, but you can actually just you'll just generate electricity just by putting copper wire out, simply because it moves through the magnetic field. And in theory, if you had enough of that, you would have all the electricity you want all the time, as long as the earth kept going around on its axis. I'm trying to think of the name of the website. Oh, can't think of it. But I learned about them through this great book catalog called Loom Panics. You guys ever hear of that?
No.
They were out in Port Townsend, Washington. I loved getting their catalogs. They would have really cool articles in the catalogs, and then they would have like all these book sections, and there were sections that even disgusted me. And I'm like, that's when I knew that the First Amendment was working. Because even if there was stuff in there, like they had like a whole murder, death, and torture section, no, I don't want to see that, but I'm glad the First Amendment is there and they had a whole section that apparently was used by mystery and fiction writers, like how to commit crimes or details of like mass murders and stuff, and you could go there. And they were famous. They published the book Hitman. There was like a trial about it. They were trying to like shut them down and ban the book because apparently somebody got the book out and tried to be a hitman using the book's instructions, and they pointed out they didn't follow the book's instructions, and that's why they got caught. And if they'd followed the book's instructions, they would have been a successful hitman. But it was written for people that wrote detective, and they're usually written by cops or something like that. But they also had books on forbidden inventions, oxygenation, alternate energy sources, alternate UFO stuff. That's where you first saw the MJ-12 books and stuff like that coming out, and then the books debunking them. It was just a really cool little resource. Unfortunately, he eventually just went out of business. And he said, this was like back in the 80s, I used to get these. And he said, basically, I guess they must have gone out of business in early and mid 90s. And he said, I'm not being forced out or anything, but I'm old and I'm retired. So see y'all later. And, but yeah, I've still got a few Loom Panics books around here. They were publishing the Principia Discordia when you couldn't get it anywhere else. That was only, and they were Kerry Thornley's stuff. If you know his stuff, he was one of the original Discordians, and he claimed to be one of the Lee Harvey Oswalds. He spent time with Oswald in the Marine Corps, and he said we were the only two Marxists in our unit.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and he says to this day he thinks he was being groomed to be like an alternate because. The way he's told it, like Lee Harvey Oswald was reported to have test driven a car that day. He didn't know how to drive. Spend a lot of money that he apparently didn't. But basically, was going out of his way to say, "Hey, look, I'm Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm going to test drive this Cadillac." And apparently took a caddy for a test drive and everything. He couldn't drive. So who was that guy that was saying he was Lee Harvey Oswald?
Yeah, talking about the guy you're talking about the cop that ended up getting shot that looked like JFK, right?
Well, I hadn't heard about that, but I was just saying that the theory is that there was more than one Oswald.
Right.
That there were multiple people reported as being Lee Harvey Oswald, but it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald. It was like there was more than one person. And the guy that got shot by Jack Ruby, who knows who he was? If he got 2 or 3 Oswalds walking around, Patsy. Maybe that's why he meant by that. I'm the Patsy. I didn't think I was going to be the one they got. I thought they were going to grab Oswald number 2. But Kerry Thornley claimed he was one of the Oswalds. He thought he was being groomed for that anyway, but it didn't pan out.
You see, that is something that I can come back with on another episode because freaking that's something I wanted to cover again. I did it a little bit last year with MK Ultra and things of that nature, but I think I can act. I really don't think that you can never go back to that subject too much. You know what I'm saying? Because there's
We're fascinated with
really?
it
Well,
as a country.
I can add somebody to that conversation. I'm
just saying you can never overuse the topic of MK Ultra. I mean, seriously, there's so much stuff.
But no, I'm talking about the JFK stuff.
Well, that's a part of it. You know that, right?
Of course, but so I have a friend who has his own podcast, his own show. He actually specializes this, an entire show. He's done this for years. Mm-hmm. His brother was one of the detectives that was supposed to be investigating JFK.
Wow.
So he has his whole persona, his whole thing was JFK. So if that would be spectacular. I gotta get you guys together, and I would love to listen to that show.
You're gonna come in here, and I ain't gonna go and have a conversation with a total stranger if you're not gonna come in here and have the conversation with them. I made Mr. Robot interview
Okay.
you. Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we'll do is if you can get him onto the show, we'll let you do the interview, and I'll just sit back and ask questions, because that'll make him feel more comfortable in the interview.
Absolutely. Yeah. We can do that. We can make a excellent show out of that.
So, I mean,
No problem.
because I mean that's kind of how how all of us, me, Mark, and Tan started this like almost 2.5 years ago, and it's like all we wanted was just a community where everybody got together, and then we ended up meeting Bob Dub, we ended up meeting Otto, Mark. It just, I mean, it's like it's been an amazing ride, and it's always.
It's a quantum gathering, like literally.
No, this isn't.
These random elements, these random people coming up with some great conversation and switching out knowledge. Sure.
Understand now that was quantum gathering just a little while ago. Now we've moved on into the esoteric agenda.
Wait!
Okay.
Aren't we doing headlines at midnight? It's after. Oh no, it's not midnight where you are yet. Okay.
Right. So
it's after midnight here.
We've got 10 minutes to go before 11:30. I want to take a quick break so that we can come back and start headlines after midnight. If you guys want to do that, you can stick around, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And I'm going to end the show. I hope you guys enjoyed being on here. If you want to, let's get everybody's socials so that everybody knows, because I am going to edit this video, put it out as an edited version. So let's start with you, V.
Yeah, I'm just V. No social media at the moment. Yeah, TLB talk, I'll just say it, is gonna be down for a hot minute, which is for a very, very good reason. I'm very happy. And yeah, just in the future, just keep me in mind. I know we're gonna be talking on minds a lot, but just don't put TLB talk out for the count. Anyways, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I'm mainly on minds.com under the username Medworthy. Most of my content relates around educational, explaining educational or providing educational information around technology and looking at related news.
Okay, how about you, Otto? Go ahead and take us
You
out.
can find me on Minds, and don't forget Mr. Robot stuff too.
He's asleep.
Mr. Robot, what do you think?
We will hopefully get him at midnight when he wakes from his comatose state.
Otherwise, he'll just just after everybody else goes to bed, he'll just wake up and he'll be here in the Jitsi by himself, saying, "Where did they all go?"
Yep, that's it.
But you can find me on minds.com, and you can check out navakavada.org. That's NAVAKAVADA. It's spelled just like it sounds.
Okay. Now, my name's Roger Hansen. You can find me on minds.com at Roger_Hansen. You can also find me on Kick as Roger_Hansen. I stream on Rumble, YouTube, Kick, sometimes DLive, and Twitch. If you guys like what you've seen, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. Make comments down in the comments section. It's cool to make comments in the chat section, but making them in the comment section is really important. So if you haven't enjoyed this show, please go make some comments for me. With that being said, I'm going to end this show, and we will talk to you later.